OTAs start next week, about 10 days. I like sort of organizing my thoughts beforehand. What do I need to look for? Because there's too much happening at once. You kind of have a game plan of what
Okay.
to look for. And so let's go through it. What are the top storylines we got to be monitoring?
Okay. Okay. Here's the thing.
Yeah,
Quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. Your top three storylines are the quarterback.
that's the thing. It is. And the
Oh,
thing
you
is,
gotta.
it's obvious, and we'll talk about it, but it's almost like you can't only do the quarterback. You got to remember there's other things too because fans want other stuff. But you almost can't do enough quarterback. And this year, there's actually going to be a competition. It's very
Right.
intriguing. They usually don't have these.
Yeah. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, I don't give a crap about the backup quarterback because Brock Purdy isn't going to participate. But in this case, it's not so clear it's the backup quarterback. Who
No.
knows what's going to happen? So you really have to pay attention. It's like, I got to tell you, I said quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. When I was in graduate school in English at Stanford, the guy who directed my dissertation, he quizzed me one time. He says, "Who's the greatest English novelist?" And I didn't know. And I was quiet. And he goes, "Dickens, Dickens, Dickens." So now you know.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Quarterback, quarterback, quarterback.
And it's like,
Iggy.
is Trey Lance throwing different? What are his? I'll have the slow motion videos of him throwing. We'll dissect his mechanics, and then we'll be tallying up his completion percentage against Sam Darnold and his TDI ratio. I mean, there is going to be a lot of analysis about these throws.
And I want to say something else before we move on to the lesser stories. Let's say, for example, Trey Lance wins the competition. I'm not saying he will because I have no idea, but I'm just saying, let's say he does. And let's say he starts the season because I believe the winner of this competition starts the season. I don't think Purdy is all of a sudden going to be ready for game one, but I could
Yeah.
be wrong.
Yeah.
Let's say it's Trey Lance. Let's say he gets the first three games and he wins them and he does really well. Then they say Brock Purdy's ready. Do you think they'll put in Brock Purdy if the other guy
No.
won three games and looks good? No.
No.
So what I'm saying is they're actually auditioning to be the starter.
I would agree. Because nothing against Brock Purdy, but if he misses training camp the way we think he will, in addition to OTAs and mini camp, what can you really expect for him? Like throwing him in there almost feels like a desperation move because the other two guys aren't any good. So the
Right.
number one option, the best case scenario is you can take your time with Brock, let him come back slowly and gradually, and Trey Lance is what you wanted him to be. That's the best case scenario.
And here's the other thing I think. I think Kyle Shanahan has no convictions about who's the best quarterback. He goes with whoever works for him in the short term.
I think you're totally right. I think people are trying to think, who's Kyle's guy here? Is it Trey? Is it Darnold? I think it's 33, 33, 33. He could care less.
He could care less.
He could care less. And I think that's a little dangerous because let's say they don't start 3-0, right? Let's say they start 0-1 like you thought they might. I mean, they got to go to Pittsburgh. They lost to freaking Chicago last year. What if their offense goes to Pittsburgh, lays an egg, scores 10 points, loses? Does the quarterback get benched after one game?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what if it's Lance? They score 10 points. Darnold's healthy. What do you do? I don't know. What does
I
Kyle do?
think the head coach is sleepless. Goes
Yeah.
sleepless. Yeah.
Maybe you force Brock back out there, and then he loses. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting season. And what's interesting also about it is not to have revisionist history here and start talking about things that Jimmy Garoppolo did well, but I just got to point out that the last 2 years, the Niners started off slow, and the quarterback on the field when they turned things around was Jimmy. Now,
That's
Brock,
right.
it took off with Jimmy, but it's a tough thing when you're on the brink of collapse at week 10. That's a lot of pressure. You're 3-4, you're 3-5, and all of a sudden you turn it around. You need some good leadership for that. And in football, I talk about not getting too high and not getting too low and not riding the emotional roller coaster. The one thing about Jimmy was that he was flatline all freaking time. And he had this smile on his face, and you couldn't tell if he was winning or losing, and you couldn't tell what the freaking record of the team was. Kyle's not like that. Kyle's emotional. He gets up, he gets down, and I think the team kind of needed Jimmy in that sense. They needed his steadiness, even if, like, we mock how he played quarterback, sure. But his leadership style, he got it from New England. It's exactly the kind of temperament you want from a quarterback. Does Sam Darnold have that temperament? If the Niners are 3-4, is Sam Darnold going to pick him out of that hole? I don't know. And I don't even know if Brock's that guy because he didn't have to do that last year.
Right. So,
Yeah.
okay. So for me, the storyline is quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. What are the storylines are worth devoting time to?
Well, there's a couple things like we had just talked about. Are the Niners going to start slow? Is Kyle going to do anything different this offseason to have a fast start? Like, that's something to kind of keep in the back of my mind as I'm watching. Instead of just evaluating the players, the good and the not so good, well, evaluate Kyle too. Well, what about the structure of your practices?
I
That's
love
something.
it.
So that's something. And also, Wilkes, we're talking about how much you changing. How much you changing there, buddy? So,
Also, Iggy,
yeah,
what's his demeanor like
what's his
during?
demeanor?
Is he quiet? Does he
Yeah,
have his hands folded on his chest? Is he observant or is he vocal? I'd
yeah.
like to know what he's like during practice. I have a feeling he's quiet, but I don't know.
Well, he isn't that quiet. He's with the defensive backs. He's a former defensive backs coach, and he's like, it seems like he's training them himself. D'Amico used to do that a little bit. He was a former linebacker and linebackers coach, so he was with the linebackers. Now D'Amico's with the DBs, so he's hands on.
Wilkes is with the DVs. Yeah. I'd
With the
like to
DBs.
know about his demeanor and what he changes. So, okay, Kyle and Wilkes, those are coaches. What about storylines with players?
Yeah, this one's kind of silly, and I've never done this before. But I think legitimately this offseason, there is a kicker watch on the 49ers.
I
And
love
it's
it.
like, because if he starts missing kicks in practice, that's a national story. You know, the kicker that the Niners took in round 3, the number 1 kicker taken in the draft, is blowing it in camp. Oh, my God. So I just have to watch to see that if he makes the kicks, no one cares. Good. You made the kicks. And what's tough is, on that field, it's kind of hard to tell if the ball goes through the uprights. You got to get like a good, you know what I mean? You're kind of to the side a little bit. You can't get behind it. So kicker watch, really excited for that. But people want to know, how did Jake Moody look?
Absolutely.
Kicker watch. And then Javon Hargrave, I think, is a big one. I mean, he's the big addition. He's supposed to be the reason they're going to win the Super Bowl this year, is this one guy that they added. Like, what does he look like?
Is he going to go one-on-one against Trent Williams?
No. He'll go one-on-one against Aaron Banks, the guards, and Burf.
Well, that'll
mostly
be
Banks.
interesting to see.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see. Bosa goes against Trent Williams, although they don't really do it very much. They kind of, maybe once or twice, and then they shut him down. But, yeah, Hargrave. Also, want to see Kinlaw. He's still on the team. If he can, Kinlaw and Armstead. Kinlaw didn't do much last year. Neither did Armstead. Armstead played 8 games, had 0 sacks in the regular season. If he can be what he was 2 years ago, all of a sudden the Niners have just a dominant pass rush. So he has a lot to prove as well. And he got hurt immediately in training camp last year, so the offseason is important for him.
We're talking about
Armstead. Yeah.
Next question.
Next question. Anything else? I mean, obviously, the rookies, the players who assert themselves, but those
What about
I gotta
what about a defensive back?
Yeah. I mean, they traded up for a defensive back, a free safety. What's the plan for him?
Yeah.
Did you trade up to redshirt him for a year, or is he going to take someone's job? Is there a package of plays for him? That's true. The Jair Brown question. What is he going to do right now? I like that.
Okay.
What has he done
I'll
for us
tell you
lately?
a story I'm not interested in. Kittle. I'm not interested.
Yeah, enough.
When he plays the season, I'll see how he plays.
Yep.
But they're going to bring him out every day to talk to the media.
Here's my prediction. When they bring out Kittle and Juszczyk, they're going to say, so what do you think of Trey Lance? And they're going to say, oh, yeah, he's a great kid. Great kid. He really knows the offense. And they're going to give a bunch of backhanded compliments. And then when they say, so what do you think of Sam Darnold? You are going to hear the most effusive praise ever. And that is going to be George Kittle's way of casting his vote for who the quarterback should be.
Yeah.
Not that he should get one.
He doesn't get one.
No, he shouldn't.
So I'm not that interested in how he does in scrimmages and, I'm just not interested in him. And since there's so much else to cover, I think you could, again, you're down there, I'm not, but I think you could take a pass on him.
I got another one. Debo watch. He was never in shape last offseason.
That's a good
But
one.
he held out. He had grievances. He came back. He was overweight. He got hurt. Never got in shape. Had a down year. Uh, for him to play at his best, he needs to be in tip-top shape, and he needs to be that in the entire offseason. So let's see. Debo, watch.
I like it. And you're allowed to film during, before
Yeah.
the thing starts. You could film his body. So what do his
Yeah.
legs look like? What do his, arms look
It's
like?
obvious. It's
It's a
obvious with
fair
him.
thing to do.
Because, he's supposed to be one of the best players in the league. You're judged more, not just on your talent, but on your professionalism. Look at Christian
Yes.
McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is going to look like the exact same in May, in September, in October, in January. He always looks exact. He's in tip-top shape all the time. He doesn't he doesn't pull a Roberto Duran and just put on 20 pounds and then, work it off or something like that. It's not his style. And Debo, that can't be your style either. It almost feels like he thinks he can do that in the offseason and then work it off. No, you got to be as driven as you were before you got the money. Debo, watch. Because the question with guys like that is like, why were you so driven? Were you driven because you were about to get paid, or were you driven because you want to be the greatest? If you want to be the greatest, you got to do that thing every single year. It's tough. It takes a lot of commitment.
I like that you mentioned Roberto Duran. It's true. He used to get fat between fights, and that's why Ray Leonard had an easy time with him in the No Mas fight because he wasn't really ready. But Duran is one of my all-time, in my list, greatest fighters. And I would say, even though he wasn't in shape like Christian McCaffrey, he was a better fighter than Christian McCaffrey is a football player.
You hear that, Christian? In your face.
I'm sorry.
It was really funny. I was hanging out with my 13-year-old nephew the other day, and he's been hanging out with my dad a lot, and my dad's been teaching him about boxing. And
He's been asking me.
Yeah, he told him who the 5 greatest boxers of all time are, and my 13-year-old nephew recited them to me verbatim without really having seen any of them fight ever, and I thought it was just the cutest thing ever. So, Sam, shout out to you for knowing that. It's really funny.
Hi, Sam.
And he's like, so Grandpa Lowell, he asked me who the greatest boxer of all time was, and I said Muhammad Ali, which I think is probably a pretty good guess from a 13-year-old. I mean, I would think he would have said Mike Tyson or something. And he was like, and Grandpa Lowell was like, no, Sugar Ray Robinson.
Oh,
yeah, it's true.
Not even close.
So
Ali was a great fighter. I would put him either second or third, depending on where you put Joe Louis. So let's put him second and Joe Louis third. But Ray Robinson was clearly a better fighter. Pound for pound, he was a middleweight than Ali.
You and Walsh used to argue.
Oh, we never argued about that.
About Louis and Muhammad Ali, right?
Yeah. And Bill, we argued about it all the time. And at the time, I said that Ali would have beat him. And I think Ali would have beat him. He would have run around, jabbed him, got a decision. And Walsh was older and disagreed and said he felt Louis would knock him out. And he also said, which was very perceptive, if Ali had his way, there wouldn't be a fight. They would just be dancing. And he said, if there were a fight, Louis would have to make the fight. And I agree with Bill on that.
Interesting. Right. Because, Louis is just going to sort of like slowly stalk him around the ring. And Ali could just run away forever if he wanted to.
And jab.
And just not engage.
Never take a chance. Safety first. Never take a chance.
Yeah, that's true. And that would be like the most boring fight of all time. Yeah.
It would be interesting. And, that was one of the things I liked about Bill Walsh a lot. He liked boxing. He knew as much or more than I did. And he wanted to argue about it. And he was very passionate. We got to talk about this again. Like it really mattered,
Yeah. Also, a thing I like about coaches, really smart coaches, Salah's like this. You're like this, but you're not a coach. But people who really know the sport, like that level, they can sort of visualize how a competition would go. They could see it. Like he could see the whole fight in his head. And I remember talking to the moment I realized Salah was brilliant was when I was interviewing him about the Super Bowl between the Rams and the Patriots. And it was off the record. And he was like I'm going to be candid here because I don't want my peers to know what I really think. But he was like, everyone thinks it's going to be a really high scoring game. It's going to be a really low scoring game because of this reason. Like Bill Belichick's going to do this to Sean McVay and just mess up what he does. And then Wade Phillips is going to do this to Josh McDaniels. And he was like, he just called the whole game. Like, wow. So yeah, I like that coaches can do that. It's really interesting. Yeah.
There are certain coaches who can do that.
Yeah.
Bill could do it in football and he could do it in boxing. And Salah can do it in chess and he can do it in football.
You did it one time too. I remember I was going to, I want to say like my junior prom or like something like junior prom. I was 16 and Tyson was fighting that night. I think he was fighting Lennox Lewis. And I went out and before I went out, I said, Dad, who's going to win? And you said, oh, Lennox Lewis is going to stop him in. You gave a round. And I was like, I didn't even ask you. That's so specific. And I remember we went out after the thing, we went bowling and the fight had just ended. And I asked, well, what happened? It's like, oh, Lennox Lewis stopped him in the whatever round. I was like, how did he know? Why? So yeah, that was pretty cool. You did it. You did it. Yeah. Frank Tom Ocean says Wilkes equals comp pick equals terrible draft choice. LOL. Right. If Wilkes becomes a head coach and the Niners get that third round comp pick for him, then they waste it on a kicker.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank Tom Ocean.
Do we have any more topics?
No more topics. That's it. But we have a couple more questions. Mike Rhea says, maybe we should have kept either Mike or Robert. Mike who? You? Robert Saleh? He got a head coaching job. Why are you going to keep him? I don't know, man. I want to see another bet between the Cohns, says Finesse Kid.
Well, we will, but not. It's too early for bets.
Not at this time. Yeah, you can't be betting willy-nilly in May, but we will.
Willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly. Timothy Glenn says, who throws the ball at rookie minicamp? It was a couple of guys who aren't on the team. They were tryout guys. Steven Montez, Clayton Thorson. They just needed some guys to get through a practice. So that's who they got. Hope that helps you. That's the end of the show. It's been a terrific one. My opinion. What do you think, Dad?
I'd say this is one of the greatest ever.
Capono, thank you very much. Ant-Man Felix says, at a restaurant the other day, I noticed a framed news article titled Raiders Humiliate Redskins. Can't Cheer This Champ, written by Lowell Cohn, where you talked about Al Davis' bright bracelet. Do you remember this?
No, I don't. I apologize. Thanks for reminding me, but I figure I wrote about 8,000 columns in my life, and my brain pan can't hold all of those.
That must have been from a Super Bowl in like 1984? Yeah. January of 84?
Yeah.
When the Raiders won?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was framed. It must have been good. The pros, I bet you. Remember that one time when we were in Dry Creek wine tasting with your cousin Allison, and we wanted to go to Unti, but it said by appointment only, and she was like turning around gonna leave, and we were like, why don't we just go and see what happens? And we walk in, and there's like one of your articles framed on the wall, and you're like, hi, I'm the guy that wrote that article. You didn't even have to say that, but they're like, Lowell, so good to see you. And your cousin was like, what the hell was that?
Then the owner came, George Unti, and then his son, Mick, he was in the fields. He came, and they gave us this great tasting. By the way, Unti Winery, they make Italian varietals up outside of Healdsburg. What a wonderful winery, and they're great people.
Scott says, Lowell, I really enjoyed your book, Gloves Off. Will you be doing a book signing by any chance?
No book signing. Thank you. First of all, Scott, thank you so much. I'm glad you liked it, but I'm past that book now, and I'm writing another one.
If we ever do a meet and greet for the Cohn Zone or people affiliated with my channel,
books.
Bring your book, and we might do that. So I'll let you know. Okay. You know, and I'd have like other people that work with us there too, like.
And I'd be happy to sign books in that context. Yes.
There you go.